Certainly don't feel like I'm at my best, and it's like I want to explore new territory.
Yeah, I just feel like with the for listeners, we were just talking about taking notes in a podcast, whether you do it or not.
And you've got the notebook out.
Yeah, I got the notebook out. But I feel like the way I think about it is like you want it to flow as much as you can. You don't want to just be like, what's this? Like 100%. I remember I did an episode with Trent Hodgkinson, and I went back and listened to it, and I was like, bro, I'm just literally telling him his career right now. I'm like, in 2018, you did this. And I was like, what am I doing? But then I feel like sometimes after an episode, you're like, fuck, like, why didn't I ask this question? You know what I mean? So it's just...
It is hard. Yeah. What do you think is your goal out of the podcast and every guest you have on?
I just reckon just to hear their story, eh?
Yeah.
And just... I'm exactly the same as you, what you said. When you get really interested in someone and you just want to go and listen to as many podcasts that are on, just hear what they have to say. And yeah, I'm the exact same. Like, I'm trying to think of someone. For example, when I was like 16, I loved cricket. I loved Marnus Labuschagne. That's how I started listening to We Got the Chocolates, because I went and searched up an interview with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, just hear everyone's stories. What's your goal with the podcast?
Well, I think when I started back in 2020. Well, I started recording the end of 2019 when I bought all the gear from JB Hi-Fi. There's a photo of me with like two huge JB Hi-Fi bags where I just went and bought all the gear. Had no idea how to make it work.
All the gear, no idea.
But I didn't have a lot of passion in my life at the time. Like, a lot of the things I was doing were just what I felt to be like responsibilities. I went to my job because, you got to earn a living, and I was passionate about my job at one point, but I wasn't anymore. And I wanted something to look forward to every week. I wanted to have something that excited me when I got out of bed, that I looked forward to that moment in the week and got to enjoy it and embrace it and wanted to be better at it. And I always loved conversation. And specifically, I always love story. I think human story, whether someone's got a similar story to you or a completely different one, I find it so inspiring. Like, I think it can change lives.
100%.
And I wanted to be in the driver's seat of a platform where I got to experience that and hear that firsthand, but just be curious and ask the questions that I wish other people had asked.
Yeah.
And so I started it. And then as it has developed, I think that part of the challenge is one side of your brain is like the logic commercial side. That's, if you want to do more of it, you got to make sense out of, how can this become enough of a business that it can support and sustain itself and continue to happen? But then the other part of my brain, which is, the strong overpowering side, is like the selfishness of, I really just want to hear great stories and I want to have the conversations I want to have. And so now there's a bit of both. It's like, what's going to move the needle so I can grow this and make it better? The other part is what's going to satisfy my hunger for curiosity and story.
Yeah. How do you balance that, do you reckon? Are you more of or from what I can see, I feel like you're hugely into the story part of it, obviously. But as you were saying, you have to be into the business side as well if you want to make a living out of it. How do you sort of balance that to keep that passion, but also have that sense about you that you need to do these things to get where you want to go?
How do I balance it? Not well, because I'm not making much of a commercial success out of it. But I am getting better at understanding what levers to pull commercially. So one thing I've recognized is I'm not a huge social media person. And, I say that with a grain of salt. Like, yes, I do go on social media and I consume, but I'm not super fussed about how many followers I have or, what is like the best hook at the start of a video, or like that stuff doesn't interest me that much. But I do want to grow my podcast. I do want to grow the platform. I do want to get the best guests I possibly can. I want to be really excited about everyone that I have on the interview. So I'm understanding that in order to achieve my goals, I have to be better commercially.
Yeah.
And I have to make better marketing decisions. And so I kind of, by force of nature, like, I have to learn.
Yeah.
So I'm trying, and I think so it's a necessity that I balance it. Like, it's been forced upon me if I want to continue moving in the direction that I do. I'm also blessed that I record with the same producers as Mark Boris, of which both guys that I work with, Sam and Jonah, are bloody great minds. And so I organise the guests for my podcast, and they set up the studio for me. And they don't edit my podcast yet, so I do everything myself. But when I'm in the studio chatting to them and watching them work away at Mark's stuff, like I can see Jonah in terms of editing a podcast and bringing it together. Unbelievable. Like so talented, so skilled. I'm like, I want my stuff to look like that. I want to feel that crisp when I put out content. I look at the way that Sam's mind works when he's bringing guests in and how he, provides and sells that value for people to come on the show, and the way that he thinks about the research and the structure of episodes. And I'm like, I want to learn from that. And so you get inspired by the people that you work with. And so I think that ultimately it's like putting yourself in a position where the people around you have strengths that you don't.
Yeah.
And, remind you of what your own strengths are so that you can continue to move in the right direction. And ultimately, I think the biggest filter is just, with every evolution of anything, I always ask myself, like, is this why I do it? Because I don't want it to become so commercial that it turns into just another job.
Yeah.
Because I started it because I love it, so I don't want it to turn into a chore. I don't want to drive to the studio and go, fuck, I'm interviewing this guest today and I don't want to, or I don't want to go, far out. That's not me. I just put out an episode where I'm running a script that someone else runs on their show, because I think what I see is when I listen to other podcasts, you can see who people are inspired by, and that's great because we're all inspired by people. But you don't want to just be an echo of someone else. Like you want to be your own version. You want to be your own person. So, man, it's a hard industry to crack.
Yeah, 100%. You talk about Sam and Joni, your producers. How'd you link up with those boys?
That's actually a great story. So, back in 2023, I, by a stretch of a miracle, managed to get myself onto a list of speakers for a 3-day summit at Luna Park in Sydney.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I've been reaching out to these event organisers because, part of what I do is keynote speaking. And at the time, I was really trying to crack it. I was trying to get opportunities and find myself in positions to speak and sharpen my skills. Also wanted to earn a little bit of money. And so I was reaching out to people all the time. And often just like it was falling on deaf ears. And I'd heard about this event coming to Sydney. It was called Humankind. It was a 3-day summit. Headline speaker was Wim Hof. Headline comedian was Jim Jeffries. And it was Reggie Watts that was sort of like leading the musical talent. And I was like, God, that'd be a fun event to speak at. And I seen it was for charity. And so I was like, oh, it's not a paid gig, but still it'd be a great room to be in. Like it'd be awesome to be able to do something great for charity, but it would be great to be around those people. What a cool opportunity. So I reached out via email, Instagram, reached out to one or two of the organisers and just no reply. And it's probably 2 weeks out from the event, a friend of mine, fellow podcaster and speaker, Cooper Chapman, he called me. I was sitting at home one day, sitting at home on the lounge with Soph. I answer his call and he's like, hey, I'm with the organisers of Humankind. Have you heard of it? I'm like, actually, I've been trying to get on the bill for the last couple of months. And he's like, well, they just had a speaker pull out. Would you like to come? I'm like, bloody oath, I'm there. Tell me what I need to send. I'll get the information through to you. And I spent the next 2 weeks practicing my gig, just trying to refine it because I knew I'd have decent opportunity for exposure. Day of the event comes and there's a huge story to it. We have a car accident on the way up. Bumper of the car's hanging off. I've got Soph, my now wife, with me. My best mate, Joey, in the back, who is a cinematographer and was going to come and make a show reel for me that day. And despite all of the adversity of the morning, we end up getting to the event and I'm on at the same time as Wim Hof. Now,
really?
Wim's the headliner. So straight away I'm like, nobody's coming to see Brad Dryburgh speak. They're seeing the program, main stage Wim Hof. Who the hell is Brad Dryburgh? Give him the brush. We'll go and see the guy that we're paid to see. And so I knew that my crowd would be small, but I was like, I don't care. I'm here. It's a great opportunity. I'm going to make the most of it. And there were probably 15 people in the room. A couple out of curiosity because they were interested in my health story, having experienced different things in the health world themselves. And a few staff, I think, out of pity because they didn't want me to have no one there. And so I did what I believe was the best gig I've ever done in my life.
Oh, really?
I feel like it just all came to on that day for me. And I had such amazing feedback from the staff, so much so that when I left that day, I said, hey, if anyone pulls out tomorrow, call me. And the next day somebody did. They pulled out and they called and said, hey, can you get from Wollongong to Luna Park and be on stage in 90 minutes?
Far out.
And miraculously, we did. We got there.
Oh, really?
And it was on that day I performed what I believe was then the best gig of my life. So I topped it on day 2 to a slightly bigger audience, like sort of a half full room, and ended up having this great day where I went on to meet all these great people. One of the people I met was Mark Bouris. And Mark and I connected on our love for the Chooks. And so in one of the green rooms backstage, we just started chatting about footy and life. And it was the next day that his team reached out to me and passed on his details. And we're like, hey, Mark, enjoyed meeting you yesterday. Here's, all of our details to, what we do at their business and what we do in the studio. We'd love to stay in contact. And so I basically hassled the fuck out of them for months to try and get him on my podcast. But what ended up happening first was they invited me on to his. And that was part of what my original pitch was. I think you've really got to it's one thing to be humble, but it's another thing that you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah,
if you want to grow and develop something, you have to put your name in the ring. You have to throw your hat in there. And so I went and I was a guest on his podcast. I think it was like September, August 2023. And the episode done great for them. And at the time he had a different producer and editor. And as that kind of evolved and changed, I got in contact with Sam and Jonah, who were the new two. And I went up to record Mark on my podcast in November 2024. And we had a great chat and a really great episode. And what I think was like a really cool moment that I tied in from my episode where he mentioned something that I never got to ask him about that became the start of our podcast together on my platform. And I think that kind of piqued the curiosity and interest of the people that work around him, particularly his management. And his management reached out to me maybe a month or two later and said, hey, we'd love to have a chat. And so I went up and met them in Sydney and they said, we're thinking about opening the door and bringing in one or two others to be a part of this bigger world of the Mentored production company.
Yeah. And
so I'm one of those people at the moment who's working away towards, whatever the future looks like with them. And there's also, Andrew Webster and Buzz Rothfield who have got, I can't think of the name of the show. It's terrible of me.
Buzz, man, I love Buzz.
They've got, in fact, forget about the name. They've got an amazing show. You'd be able to search their names and find it. It's Off Something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Off the Record or something. I don't know.
It's something like that. Yeah.
But they do an amazing job. And all of that is spearheaded by, Sam, the producer, and Jonah, the editor, who are just very talented young guys. And I love Mark. One thing I love about Mark and the business he's created is he's got a really young, energetic team. Yeah. And so the energy is always great. And so I go up there and when I record, which is typically a Friday I record, we go up and, we do 2 or 3 eps and make the most of the day while I'm up there in the city. And, we go for a little lunch stop in Darley Deli down the road. And, it's just like a great day. I always look forward to it because the energy of everyone is great.
Yeah. He seems like a legend. What was it like going from you're literally trying your ass off to just get a gig at this speaking event and then 3 months later you're literally on one of the biggest podcasts in the country in terms of Mark Bouris. What was that kind of transition like?
It's exciting. And I think, you have a hope that when those opportunities come that they're the catalyst for just that consistently.
Yeah.
But it's like, one of the biggest lessons of my life has been that life is not linear, right? So, one big win doesn't necessarily mean that the next couple of months are going to be full of them. But I do believe that those big wins make the losses worthwhile.
Yeah.
Make the moments where you eat a little bit of humble pie or you learn a hard lesson far more valuable. And I think they're just the vote of confidence when you get those wins to keep going, that the thing that you're doing is going in the right direction. And, the beautiful thing about the last 5 years for me has been that for all of the self-belief I have that has been tested a whole lot of times, you get those little wins along the way. And like one of them was Mark. One of them was Dill Buckley, who I have so much love and respect for and what he does in this space, where you're sort of chipping away and then you're like, okay, so there's a lot of work in front of me, and then you start working and then you start to develop what you believe is real competence, and in that competence you get confidence in yourself and you're like, oh, I am good at this. And then you get to like another stage where you're like, but hold on, if I want to be like a master at this, I'm still so far away. And you come back to into this space of competence but doubt.
Yeah.
And so like I had a podcast, which was a first for me. I had a live podcast I recorded on Wednesday night which was at the Waterfront Tavern, which is a beautiful venue on the marina in Shell Cove.
Yeah, I
down
saw that.
my
I saw
area.
that, yeah.
And I had a great guest. I had Owen Wright, one of Australia's biggest sporting legends, has one of the best comeback stories in Australian sport. He's a surfing legend. He wrote an incredible book called Against the Water, and he's such a great bloke. And it was a big guest to pull for the live night. We had an audience of 70 to 100, so we fit as many as we sort of could into this space. And it was an audience of like all different kinds of people. I had like, you could tell by the haircuts, a couple of young groms in the crowd who, love their surfing. We had some folks who'd come out with their husbands and wives and their friends to be there and support and listen. And just a lot of people I didn't know, which was great. But I hadn't recorded for 12 weeks. I've been away on my honeymoon and, got married and have come back and, I've actually got a book coming out next year. And so I've been finishing, which I feel like weirdly I haven't spoken about, but I guess I will at some point. And it's just been a busy 12 weeks. And so I haven't been able to record. I've just taken a little break. And it's not that I haven't been able to, it's just I've prioritized other things.
Yeah.
And so I felt so rusty. I was like, oh my God. I was up there and in the conversation I had to like regather myself and go, hey, I know you feel rusty, but you're going to be rustier if you're thinking about how shit you might be right now.
Yeah.
And I got off stage and I said to Owen, mate, I'm so sorry. Like, I was rusty. And he's like, no, you weren't. You were fine. But I think what I recognize is I'm not where I want to be. And I think that that's healthy.
Yeah.
I think that's healthy. So I don't know for you, do you feel like, you've been doing this for a while too now, you go through that roller coaster of like you start to build what you believe to be a bit of confidence and confidence in yourself. And then you start to kind of doubt it again because you want to go to the next level.
I feel like you'll do an episode and you're like, fuck, I'm good at this. Like, I'm really good at this. And then you do an episode and you're like, I'm so shit at this. Like, what am I? Not so shit, but you're like, you kind of go through those waves and it's like, oh, this is really going well. And then you go through and you're just a bit stagnant for a bit and you're like, oh, why aren't I growing? Why isn't this? But then that's all part of the fun, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think, it's so important to recognize that like you don't usually expect perfection from the people that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And so like I think you've got to give yourself a little bit of leash too, right? To be creative and try things. Like my favorite thing to listen to isn't exactly one particular person, but I love listening to people who step outside of their speciality, right? So I love when I listen to Andrew Huberman, who I think is consistently one of the best conversationalists in the podcast world. I love listening to him speak to people who aren't science people.
Yeah.
Like when he speaks to a comedian or an athlete or a musician or a creative of any kind, I believe that because of his unique knowledge and perspective, he gets something new and interesting out of those guests. The same as when Theo Von speaks to someone who's very academic.
That's right. I was literally that's crazy. I was literally thinking of Andrew Huberman when he went on Theo Von's podcast just then. I was literally thinking of that.
It creates a beautiful and unique dynamic, right? And so it's kind of like if you put a great league player on a league show, you're going to get a bit of X's and O's of footy.
Yeah.
But if you put them on a different show, you get another side to them because I'm not going to sit down with a couple of my great mates who are rugby league players who have come from the podcast. We didn't really talk about the X's and O's of footy because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
When they talk about shapes and different plays they're running, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
But like, I'm a human being who understands a little bit of life. When I ask those questions, you see a different side to them. So I love that about podcasts. And I think you only get that when people step outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah, 100%. Like even on... I think it was Freddie and the Eighth, one of the footy shows the other day. Ned Brockman was on it, just on the panel. And like, obviously he knows a bit of footy, but he doesn't know like the X's and O's like a player, but it still adds that, he's still adding value because he's a young man who watches footy and has played footy, but that's nowhere near his speciality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I want to get into just a bit of you growing up. Obviously hear a bit of your story. You were diagnosed with cystic fibrosis very young. Yeah. How did that impact you growing up?
Yeah, to a degree it didn't. Of course it does, but to a degree it didn't. And what I mean by that is it didn't impact me impact me in any sort of negative way.
Yeah.
I was very blessed that I was born into an amazing family. Like my dad and my mum was the most well-equipped people to deal with the situation that they were dealt. Like they were so positive and so upbeat and did such an amazing job of getting to a point of understanding with cystic fibrosis that we did everything we could to make sure that I had the best chance of it at a healthy life. And I really did.
Yeah.
I was very healthy, despite cystic fibrosis being a very challenging diagnosis and something that, is a very real threat to your life.
What sort of sorry to cut.
That's
Just
all right.
what sort of like symptoms are you dealing with day to day, especially growing up?
Yeah,
Just
so I guess to explain the symptoms, I guess I'll give a bit of an idea of the underlying cause, which is cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is caused by a defective gene that stops mucus from moving thinly and freely throughout the body. And so mucus in people with cystic fibrosis tends to get thick and sticky and sit and impair the function of organs. So you typically think of mucus as like the lungs and the respiratory system, and you can probably hear I got a little something going on with the voice today, which is not cystic fibrosis related, but breakdown of immunity related, because I've been running myself ragged the last couple of months. But essentially that mucus can sit thick and heavy on the lungs, which blocks the airways, so you get a reduced function and capacity of lungs. But it also becomes a breeding ground for infection.
Yeah.
And so cystic fibrosis lungs typically over time break down, they have scar tissue, they start to have irreparable damage that ultimately gets the lungs to a place in which people feel like they're drowning from the inside out with all that mucus. But also the mucus affects other organs in the body.
Oh, really?
Particularly the digestive system. And so from a young age, my pancreas doesn't produce digestive enzyme. So anytime I eat anything with protein or fat, like I had a bacon and egg roll on the way up here and a coffee, which is me dobbing myself in, going a little off the diet. But to digest something like that, I have to take a number of capsules that give my body the digestive enzyme it needs to take not only the nutrients from the food, but just break it down and pass it, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I've taken digestive enzymes my whole life. My pancreas does not do that for me, and that is the case for most people with CF. But then it also creates other dynamics and challenges down the line. It's quite a complex condition. So, at the age of 9, I was diagnosed with liver disease. And so I've had cirrhosis of the liver from the age of 9, which is kind of like what an alcoholic gets.
Far out.
So I knew I'd never drink. So I've saved myself a whole lot of cash and a whole lot of hangovers. But then it also creates portal hypertension in some cases, which is where basically the blood vessels out of the liver are under more pressure. They can't pass all the blood, and the blood finds its way to alternate areas and through new routes outside of the liver. And for me, it tends to find its way to the base of the esophagus, where these varices fill up with blood and they're at risk of bursting, bleeding, and being fatal internally. And so the old medical record is pretty long. Yeah. I can be a doctor's worst nightmare, but credit to my parents. They done such an amazing job of doing everything they could to prevent a lot of those symptoms when I was young. And so, part of that was like daily lung physiotherapy, which when you're a baby is like, or, a young kid, when you're a baby, it's very gentle. It's like literally tapping on the lungs with the fingers to help break up the mucus and move it around the lungs, because you want to be able to clear it.
Yeah.
And you're either clearing it by coughing it out or, swallowing it. And so they would do that, and then as you get older, they can sort of hit you like a bongo drum with their hands. And it kind of looks brutal when you're watching it, but it's necessary, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to move it, otherwise it becomes really dangerous. And so by product of being so consistent with that, and then eventually, breathing in medication through a nebulizer and doing sort of a bunch of different exercises for physiotherapy, and thankfully being really active as a kid because I love sport, my lungs stayed really clear for the first 13 years of my life.
Oh, wow.
I've taken always a lot of tablets. Like basically from the time I could swallow a tablet, I've taken 30 to 50 a day.
Far out.
For my whole life. So
a lot of tablets.
It's a lot of capsules, and majority of those are the digestive enzymes, but then there's stuff to maintain the function of my liver. There's stuff to prevent other problems that come down the line of cystic fibrosis. And so, it's like it's complex. And in terms of symptoms, I had my first like really challenging lung infection when I was 13, which changed the state of my lungs kind of for a long period of time. So I went from, a lot of people with cystic fibrosis would have had infections in the early years. I didn't. And they would typically, with those infections, have like quite green, thick, sticky mucus that they were coughing up a lot. My lungs were always pretty clear. The minute I got diagnosed with this infection at 13, or I say diagnosed, but they found this infection in my lungs, which is done via a sputum sample. You basically cough up a golly in a jar,
Oh, wow.
to be less scientific. And they test it, see what it grows in a lab. And it grew multi-resistant staph, which 99% of people have on their skin. But when you've got cystic fibrosis and you get it in your lungs, it gets very hard to clear. So I had like intense antibiotic protocol for 18 months that made me sick every day to try and clear this, and we could just never clear it. So from the age of 13 to 26, I had this infection in my lungs.
Far out.
And so pretty much every day for that 13-year period, I would cough up pretty green, thick mucus. Usually in the morning, I felt I had the most of it. And when I exercised, there was always something to come up. So the state of my lungs changed from that period of time. But it still didn't really challenge the way that I felt. Like I had a new symptom, but I didn't feel like any less active, or I didn't feel like I was under more strain until I got to 18 and I started to become a little bit inconsistent with some of the stuff that had made me so well. Like I took it for granted, and I got pneumonia and got pretty sick in the lungs, and then my lungs started bleeding.
Yeah.
Bleeding lungs is pretty bloody terrifying when it happens for the first time. Like you're coughing up blood uncontrollably, and you don't know where it's coming from at first. So I'd never bled from the lungs before, but I'd always been warned about my esophageal varices bursting and bleeding internally. So when you cough up blood for the first time, and you've been told for a couple of years, like if you ever cough up blood and it's one of those varices, it could be a matter of life or death. It's bloody scary.
Yeah, 100%.
Get to emergency pretty quick. You realise how quick you can drive a car.
Yeah.
And so that was terrifying. And sort of my health really changed from 18.
Oh, really? So that infection, not the infection, when you started coughing up blood, was that from the first infection or later?
I think to a degree, yes. It was from years and years of, an infection in my lungs that ultimately like scars the airways and creates what they call bronchiectasis, which is just like irreversible damage in the lungs, right? Where those airways are now scarred, they have scar tissue there. And when another infection or some kind of force challenges the lungs, those scars can actually open up and start to bleed out. So like bleeding lungs is weird, right?
Yeah.
I got very conditioned, unfortunately, over the space of a few years to all of the signs of a bleed happening in my lungs. And it always starts with, usually you feel unwell in the lungs. You can feel something's wrong. And maybe it's a little bit more mucus than usual, or the lungs feel like they've got a bit of liquid in them. But you actually start to hear the sound of like, it's almost like the crackling of cellophane.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like the blood coming out of the scars and like bubbling out, and you can hear that. Like that's the first thing you feel. That's the first thing. It's the first sign is I can hear it. And then I get like an urge to cough, and then you start coughing up blood. And so when you have that, it's a product of just years of damage, and years of challenge in the lungs. And I had it at 18 for the first time, and I had really bad pneumonia, which is what caused that first lung bleed. And I spent 5 weeks pretty unwell, lost 9 kilos.
Far out.
And went through like 3.5 weeks in hospital, where it took me a long time to recover. This is so gross and so visual. So if you're not good with discussion around bodily fluids, block your ears for a minute. But the spew bags they give you on a plane? Mate, when I was in hospital for the first 2 weeks, I had so much mucus, I was filling up those little like sample jars quickly. So they had to give me spew bags.
Fuck.
There was that much stuff on my lungs. And I'd never really experienced CF to that degree before. So it was such a reality check that like, hey, you've got this thing. You've spent your whole life working towards being healthy in spite of it.
Yeah.
But like it's changed now. Like it's really challenging now. It's something you have to be very adamant about thinking of.
Yeah.
And you have to start to get really good with this stuff again. And I sort of struggled from 18 to 25, where despite effort, sometimes I've become a little bit complacent, but I just felt like my health was regressing. And it wasn't until I started running the marathons in 2020 and making a very, very active effort to fight against it. I still had challenges, but I started to build a resilience in my health where I was bouncing back quicker. I was avoiding some of the other pitfalls. And then it was ultimately a life-changing drug at the age of 25 that changed my health completely.
Really?
I have no mucus in my lungs anymore.
Really?
Don't get me wrong, if I get sick, like there'll be a little bit there, like a normal person would. But I haven't had a lung bleed since. I tell a lie, I've had one small one.
Yeah.
But like my wife, Soph, who I've been with for close to 3 years now, has never seen me cough blood like I cough blood for years.
Yeah.
Has never heard me wake up in the morning and like have heaps of mucus to clear my chest, which I used to every day. And so like one drug, 3 tablets a day, life-changing.
Fuck. What was that like going from literally it is affecting you day to day? I'm sure you'd be thinking about it almost 24/7 to they tell you they have this drug that can completely reinvent your life pretty much.
Yeah, it's a very unique feeling because to one degree, you hear over the course of 2 years before you get access to anything like that in Australia, you hear the stories of the UK and the US because we're always just a little bit behind.
Yeah.
And so I'd been hearing all these great stories out of the US and the UK that there was this new drug on the market that was radically changing the health scenarios and circumstances of people with cystic fibrosis. And so at first you take it with a grain of salt and, you don't get too excited about it because you don't want to fool yourself into a false sense of security that like, oh, this will change my life, and it won't. But as you start to hear more and more positive stories, you can't help but get a little bit excited. And I started to get a little bit excited, but I always had this belief that we knew it wouldn't work for everyone. There were some people who didn't respond well to it. There were plenty of people who did. But I always thought, I need to treat it as if I'll never have it until I take it and I feel it work.
Yeah.
Because I think that like you can create a really difficult corner for you to work yourself out of if you're waiting for a savior. And so I just always believe that I just got to do everything I can in my power to be really well. And if this thing happens and it works as they promise it will, it's just a massive bonus. It's a cherry on top. And so I approached it like that, and I'd started to become a little bit healthier. I still had challenges. But when I got this drug, it improved my lung function by 10%, which makes a huge difference. It removed all the mucus from my lungs in 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah.
Wow. It's pretty quick turnaround.
Absolutely. It's insane how quick it worked. And it's given me like a level of, I guess what you'd call consistency and sustainability in my health day to day. I used to have like a couple good days a week and then a couple of days where I felt just like a little bit average, like my lungs didn't want to wake up, and I'd go for a run. I really struggled at a pace that I usually would chill at, just because your lungs had these fluctuations in their state of function. But now I don't really have that. Like it takes me being a little bit run down or a little bit under the weather. And like I'm a little bit run down at the moment because I've been overseas and come back and been pretty sort of hard at work with a few responsibilities to tick off. But like I don't get sick the way I used to get sick. Like when I was a kid, I used to get the flu, for 2-3 weeks at a time.
Far out.
But I don't get that anymore. Like I might be a little bit run down for 2-3 days and then I'm fine.
Yeah, just like
I've just
a normal person.
Yeah, I just have an extra resilience to my health. And so certainly not cured of CF, and it still takes a lot of effort and energy to ensure that I stay on top of that. So I don't want to be complacent because, that's fooled me in the past. But God, it's made my life so much easier.
Yeah. Obviously, CF is a direct has a direct impact on your lungs. At what point were you like, I'm going to start running marathons? Like, because obviously marathons have a direct impact on your lungs as well.
Absolutely. I guess it was, I always hated distance running as a kid. I was a sprinter growing up, and I was a pretty good sprinter. Like, I was a state champion. I went to a Christian school, so a smaller school, but I was a state champion in the 100 and 200 meters, like consistently over the course of a few years when I was younger. in my glory days. And that's like under 7s to 11s.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I got less interested in a lot of like the athletic style sports and became more interested in just lifting weights and trying to look aesthetically pleasing. And so I lost a lot of my fitness and health and had some of those health challenges. But I was always passionate about sport. And despite being lazy sometimes, I like to move my body. And I got invited to a run club in 2020. And to be honest, I only went because like we'd all been socially locked away.
Yeah.
During COVID times, and like I wanted to get my health back on track, but I was like, God, I just need some social connection. And like everyone would have a coffee and a swim after, and I loved a coffee and a swim. I thought, bloody hell, why don't I just go check it out? And mate, I struggled so much. Like I'd never run 5K in my life. Mate, I pushed shit uphill to finish 5K. Like it was that challenging.
Yeah.
I was like, holy hell, that did not feel good. But God, it felt good knowing I'd completed it.
Yeah.
And I just think I got that bug of like testing myself physically again. And I showed up for a couple of weeks in a row, 4 weeks. It was on the 4th week I had my first lung bleed in a couple of years. So I was 24 at the time. And I ended up in hospital 3 days in a row with lung bleeds. Just every night it would sort of exacerbate and I'd start coughing up blood. And it'd be enough that, you know when it's enough to go to the hospital, which is like, we're in territory here where I don't know if it's going to stop or, you know, I don't know if I'm going to need a transfusion or something like that. And so I'd coughed up enough blood these 3 days that I was like, I better go back to the hospital. And I was in emergency at like 2 a.m. and they were testing to see how much blood I've lost and, you know, whether I'd stabilise and doing some x-rays of the lungs, etc. I was sitting there with my dad and he was asking me about the running recently. And I was like, you know what, I'm actually starting to enjoy it. And then we started talking about when I was 2 years of age, he, my Uncle Terry, and a couple of other guys had run, it was 160K across 3 days.
Oh, far out.
And yeah, big effort.
Yeah.
And it was a charity event that my dad and my mum had organised to raise money for CF.
Oh,
and there's a great photo of me on my dad's shoulder at the end of the run. It's got Dad races home for brave little boy.
Yeah.
And we were looking at some of those photos. And I was like, you know what? I think it's my time to go and do something like that. And I certainly wasn't going to go run 160K in 3 days. But I was like, what if I could go from a hospital bed with bleeding lungs to a marathon in 4.5 months? That'd be a great story. That'd be not only incredible for me to show me what I'm capable of, despite some challenges, but it would be great for the CF community to see that, yeah, you can do that. You know, that just because you're challenged by something doesn't limit or define you. And so I just set the intention, put it out to the world and work towards it. And what I found is like having what I define as like purpose for the first time in a long time to do something that wasn't just for myself, but for other people and for my family too. It just fueled my progress. I couldn't believe how quickly I progressed. And, you know, there were a lot of challenges along the way. I ended up in hospital again with bleeding lungs a month out, but ultimately completed it and fell in love with this feeling of vitality I had again. This feeling that for the most part I was relatively in control of how I felt. You know, there was always going to be the uncontrollables of CF, that is life. But I love that, you know, getting out and going for a run made me feel something. So I'm not running super long distances now, but I've run 3 marathons and an ultra. I sort of did that over a 3-year period. And right now I'm not running that long because it just doesn't serve me at this particular part of my life. I find that anything sort of past 20K can diminish the brain capacity on the day or the so after that you do it. But I've found that like running's been a very consistent part of my life since.
Yeah.
Just makes me feel great.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have found that, especially in the last couple of years, even during COVID.
Yeah.
That running, I feel like the biggest thing about it is it keeps you in the present moment. You can't go there and, especially doing a massive run or like hard run, you can't go for a run and be still at work in your office. You know what I mean? In your head.
Absolutely.
Or wherever you don't want to be. You have to be in that present moment with your feet on the pavement running.
Absolutely, man. I agree. And I think everyone's got to have those things in their life that allow them to, you know, switch off the busy brain, relax a little bit. And for me, that's just getting outside and it's exercise. And, you know, I kind of can't go a day without doing something.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
same.
I feel a little bit cooped up and mad. And even that's just a walk with a dog, just to get outside and move. And I think when you've had the times in which your lungs haven't felt great and you wished you could, you really appreciate when you can.
Yeah.
You know? So it's become such a staple part of my life.
Yeah, 100%. And I know you're working so hard because you got the potty and obviously your day job, a real estate agent. I don't know. I spoke to the founder of the Black Dog Institute a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And he said the number one thing to avoid burnout is strenuous exercise because it keeps you in the moment, takes you away from whatever you're worrying about. Because obviously exercise is good, but some exercise, it's not. Like you can still think about other things if it's not hard, you know what I mean? But strenuous exercise, all you're thinking about is, fuck, this is hard.
Yeah. Well, I found because I've been writing a lot lately, and writing's like creatively fun, but you're so sedentary. Like you're sat in a seat. Usually the posture's relatively average because you're in front of a laptop or a computer. And by the end of the day, I feel so cooped up, and like my eyes feel sort of twitchy and sore because I've just been staring at a screen. And so I find it's on those days where just intuitively I want to run the fastest.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just I want to feel like I'm flushing my lungs out, I'm moving my body, I'm waking up, and I feel so good for it. And I used to be such a morning run person. Don't get me wrong, I still appreciate the morning run. They're actually fewer and far between my evening runs now. And I find that like in the morning I love to start the day. We take the dog down the dog park and we just go for a nice walk, and it's a nice way to wake up and get my mind ready for the day. And then I love around sunset.
Yeah.
I sort of run at sunset and it sort of gets dark by the end of it, and I feel like it's the best way to relax and decompress after the day.
Yeah, it kind of just like resets your brain after a day of doing whatever, especially sitting on a laptop or something like that. And especially getting to summer now, the like not too hot nights, but when it's a bit, you feel that warmth in the air and you go out for a run, the sun's going down, mate, nothing better.
Mate, you Western Sydney folk wouldn't know it, but let me tell you, when you jump in the water after, it's even better.
Nah, I always go out to Centennial Park,
yeah.
run around there. I'm actually going there this Arvo with my missus.
How far is that from here?
Not too far. Like without traffic, under 40 minutes.
Far out. You can tell you're from Western Sydney because under 40 minutes isn't far.
Yeah.
If you said that to someone in Wollongong, it's only 40 minutes, you'd be like, what the hell? That's a Sunday drive. That's not a midday thing.
Yeah, no, but you got to get out there to see that sort of stuff. But
absolutely.
Like go Centennial Park, Bronte, 5 minutes down the road, get in the water. Nothing better, mate.
Absolutely. It's worth the drive.
Yeah, 100%. I know you got married recently.
Yes, I did.
Congrats.
Ring on the finger. Thank you.
Congrats. How much of an impact has your wife, you said her name was Soph, had on you?
Mate, massive. Like, so important. It's crazy how, you can not know somebody and be in a position where there was a day before I seen a photo of her in which I didn't know that like the next couple of years of my life would be what they have been. And then you meet someone and your life can change so quickly. It's kind of similar to what you spoke about where like, you can wake up tomorrow and your podcast or your business or one whole area of your life has exploded to become something great.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's my relationship. Like I met Soph, I saw a photo of her and I thought she was beautiful, and I sent her a message on Instagram and asked her for a date, and we went for a date, and then my life changed forever. Like she was just the most aligned person I'd ever met for my values and morals and my idea of how I wanted to live my life. And I love it. She is as family oriented and focused as I am. And mate, everyone's different in relationships, but mate, I'm a bit of a sook. Like I hate spending time away from her.
Yeah.
And so like wherever I have to go, like we've spent very little time apart in the 3 years we've been together. But if I have to go away for work for, a night, 2 nights, mate, as soon as I'm ready, I rush back to her. So she's just become like, yes, she's my wife and she's my romantic interest, but she's also my best friend, and I just love time with her. So she's become the biggest part of my life. Every decision I make now affects the both of us and vice versa for her. And so, we make those decisions as a team, and I've always, like, my biggest value has always been my relationships. And that was always my closest people, my family, and now it's her. And so I guess every part of your life becomes about, how does this move our life forward? And I'm so blessed that she's very selfless, and sometimes I'm a little bit selfish. So she's a great partner in crime, but I'm learning that, at some point there's going to be something that's really important to her. Well, I have to be a little bit more selfless in order for her to go and do the things that she wants to do and achieve her dreams too. So, mate, it's great. It's the best. I say to everyone now, if you can get married, I highly recommend it. It's great.
Yeah, what do you think actually makes a good relationship and good marriage?
Well, it's definitely aligned values. I think that's the foundation. Like, if the same things are important to you as they are to them, and for us, the biggest thing is family. Like, we FaceTime all of our parents every night because we just love chatting to our parents. It's out of no sense of obligation.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great to keep connected to your family, but we just love being in close contact with our family. And so we have the same set of values and morals. We have a very similar idea of what we want from the future, be it, we'd love to have a family together, and, we have similar ideas and interests of what we like. But ultimately, it's just pure love and compassion and support for each other. And it's just wanting to support each other in the best direction and wanting to create a life together. And so, like, everything that I do in my life is more exciting for having her in it. Yeah. And I'd like to think it's the same for her. And so, and then, marriage, not everyone wants to get married. I don't think everyone has to. But for me, I just love the sentiment of it. I love that we had a very intimate wedding. It was just our immediate family, our parents, our siblings and their partners. And, we're blessed that we're over the other side of the world, the French Riviera, with the people that we love. And we got to express what we love about each other the most, what we value about each other the most in front of our people, and make a memory that'll last forever. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that's unreal. There's nothing better than love, man.
Mate, love wins.
Mate, yeah, love conquers all. Absolutely. I always say it. I just wanted to ask you a couple more questions before we finish up. That's about the potty. This one I was really interested in. Have you had a guest, or maybe a few guests, that you've interviewed them and you've been like, holy shit, like, that is an amazing story. They've impacted you so much.
My favourite guest I've had in recent memory has been Heston Russell, former Special Forces soldier, who just has such an incredible story. And I love the conversation I had with him. Partly because I felt amazing in it. I felt like the questions I asked and the way that the conversation moved was really of interest and of value to me. But I felt like that was a special chat. It was very heartfelt, very meaningful, very honest. And I really appreciated that about that chat. I've had some amazing chats along the way. I was blessed to interview Dr. Charlie Teo when he was going through some of the difficulties of his lawsuit. And, I think Charlie's an Australian hero. He's done a lot for people who suffer from brain cancer in Australia. And so it was an incredible opportunity to interview people like him. I'm also really blessed that, like, two of my closest mates were first podcast guests, before they were friends. And so it's given me an opportunity to meet people who have become permanent parts of my life. Yeah. And so I feel very lucky for all of it. And I look at every chat as an opportunity to learn something, to hear a new story. I think the greatest thing overall that it's given me is it's really flexed the empathy muscle. It's encouraged me to think that just because I see things one way or I have one belief about the world, that not everyone's had the same experience. And so it's fully okay for people to see differently. I think we've lost a little bit of that in modern society today, where everyone wants to be right. Nobody wants to see the other side's point of view. Nobody's okay with, I say nobody, that's extreme, but there is a huge part of society that wants to win arguments as opposed to understand each other. And so I feel like when you get to speak to different people, and particularly as you mentioned at the start of this, hear their story, that's when it sort of opens your eyes up to the world, that everyone's different and has had different experiences. And so we've got to give each other a little bit of leeway, a bit of credit.
Yeah, 100%. What's next for the potty and for yourself?
I think what's next is really, with the podcast specifically, really identifying how it can make a difference. I don't want it to just be more noise in a world that's full of it. Like there is so much content and there are so many podcasts, and that's great, right? But, you know, I always ask myself a question, how can this podcast matter? And, you know, it has to be true to me, but how can the questions I ask that guest actually be really meaningful? How can it encourage them to reflect on a different side of their story that they haven't before? And so I think it's, you know, further developing my skills to ask better questions and to be more curious, but also identifying exactly what lane I can get into to make sure that happens episode after episode, because I want to chat to the most interesting people in the world.
Yeah,
I want to do more of it and be able to travel a bit with it. What's next outside of that? Well, the book is coming out, and I've spoken about the book on one or two different occasions on podcasts, but I just haven't really promoted it on social media yet. My first draft is due probably around the time that this conversation will come out, and the book is planned to be on shelves June 2026, which I'm very excited about. It's a memoir, working with Simon & Schuster, who are amazing publishers, one of the best 3 publishers in the world across the UK, the US and Australia. So I feel very privileged to have an amazing team. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Poured my heart and soul into that. And I've written stuff and gone, no, that's shit. I'm going to make it better, and I want to be really proud of this. So I will be ultimately proud of what I put out, regardless of whether it's a success commercially or not.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of what I've written. And then, mate, hopefully in the future, a family and just more happiness and great health and, mate, more love with my beautiful wife.
Yeah. What's that like writing a book? How long have you been writing it?
I was sort of given 16 weeks to
Write
write it.
It's not that long.
Which isn't a long time, and that's my fault, because they said, how long do you think you need? And I was like, I'll be fine in 16 weeks. I wish I said a little bit longer, you know. But it's been a process of, the hardest thing was trying to understand what I wanted to achieve with it. And I probably made the kind of, you know, similar to what I was speaking about before. You go through this period where I'm sort of in a period now where, because I recognize how much growth I have left in me and that I don't know everything, I've got heaps to learn, kind of doubted whether my story was valuable enough to put into that format. And, you know, the book deal come kind of out of the blue for me. Someone scoped a bit of work that I'd done, reached out, put me in contact with a publisher, I had a meeting, and they're like, hey, we like your idea, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so it kind of surprised me that it comes so early. And in that came a little bit of self-doubt, like, is my story worth people reading? And of course, I believe it is. And I have plenty of wins on the board as a keynote speaker and through the podcast world to suggest that that's so. But I wanted to make something really valuable for people. And so I kind of made the mistake at first. Some of the writing felt a little bit preachy. And I'm like, no, that's not me.
Yeah.
And that's not what I want this to be. I want this to be a story where I share my experience. And I always believe that I learn the most from reading other people's experiences and taking what I want to take from it. And so it's not a book of lessons. It's a book about life, my life, and the stuff that I've learned along the way and the challenges I've had and the wins I've had. And ultimately it's about living what I believe should be everyone's most fulfilling life. And that's completely up to them. But it's centered through this idea that, you know, you should write your own eulogy.
Yeah.
And think about the end of your life. Think about if your life was ending tomorrow,